Today is the 4th of August, and this day in Baptist history, our reading is Open to the Gospel of Peace. Our passage of Scripture is Jeremiah chapter 29 and verse 7. And seek the peace of the city whither I have caused you to be carried away captives, and pray unto the Lord for it, for in the peace thereof shall ye have peace. The complete story of sordid communist intrigue around the world is yet to be written. The fact that Russian and Chinese communism laid the foundation for much of the bloodshed on the African continent during the middle of the 20th century cannot be denied. Years of subversive activities toward the white governments that had ruled African nations came to an explosive conclusion with the announcement that the Belgian Congo would become the Independent Republic of the Congo. The proclamation was made in Leopoldville on June 30th, 1960, by King Baudouin I of Belgium. Various complaints of the Congolese led to immediate violent disorders that erupted throughout the land. Tribal disputes, the disappointment of political parties that had been excluded from the government, and a revolt of Congolese armed forces were all orchestrated and exploited by the communists. Pierre Muel and others, key followers of Patrice Lumumba, had been whisked away for study visits to China and other communist countries. They returned to the Congo to recruit dissatisfied Congolese for training by Chinese communist officers in neighboring Tanzania. These were taught the techniques of guerrilla warfare and then returned to the Congo to organize rebel leadership in building an army to aid in the overthrow of the new Congolese government. Youths were enticed to join the rebel forces with promises of adventure and revenge upon whites who had persecuted their forefathers. This is the backdrop of the occasion before us today. From guerrilla hideouts on Black Friday, January 24, 1964, young Simba rebels began to attack mission stations. The following day, young rebels dragged Reverend and Mrs. Auguste Eicher, E-I-C-H-E-R, Eicher, Baptist missionaries from their house in Kula province. They beat August and forced him to kneel. One of the crazed youths, grinning at the couple, fingered a sledgehammer. "Aren't you afraid?" another asked August. The wife, too, was asked if she was not fearful of what would happen to her after her husband was executed. Wonderfully, both could answer their tormentors that they did not experience terror. For several days, the missionary couple was threatened by continual waves of youthful Congolese troops as all of their possessions were stolen or destroyed. Faithful African converts pled for the lives of the missionaries, and during an interval between the waves of youthful Congolese troops, the missionaries were able to escape to the forest. The story of the next 9 days is an amazing account of the grace of God. Finally, on February 3rd, a United Nations helicopter reached them, and they were transported to safety. On February 9, 1964, August and Helen Eicher miraculously celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary with believers in Leopoldville. The drama is Kikwit had been more tragic. Ruth Hedge and Irene Farrell were attacked before dawn on Saturday morning, January 25th, 1964. Immediately upon opening their door, they were fired upon. Ruth and Irene were struck by arrows, and as much as Miss Farrell was struck in the throat, she died almost immediately. Miss Hege fell, that's H-E-G-E, fell from the impact of the arrow and landed on top of Miss Farrell. Miss Hege feigned death, not moving even when a Simba jerked out a handful of her hair. The young Simbas went about sacking and smashing the missionary's house completely before leaving. Somehow, when the assassins had gone, Ruth Hege found the strength to crawl to the garage, where she was found by national believers. After being taken to a hiding place, she too was finally flown to freedom by another United Nations helicopter. Miss Irene Farrell thus became the first white woman to be killed in the Congolese rebellion. A funeral service was conducted for her in Leopoldville on February 12th 1964, with about 150 missionaries and friends in attendance. Waves of attacks continued as the nationalistic spirit went wild in the former Belgian Congo. On August 4th, 1964, the rebel Simbas took the new nation's second largest city, Stanleyville, some 600 miles northeast of Leopoldville. Immediately following that event, their so-called People's Republic of the Congo regime, led by Pierre Millet, was quickly recognized by the Soviet Union as the legitimate government of the Congo. Surely that period was a time of terror and testing for all in the Congo. There can be no doubt that communism had a plan to take over all the nations on the continent of Africa as those countries became independent. A communist takeover of the Congo, however, never fully materialized. In time, missionaries began to return and were able to function again to some extent. To God be the glory.